There's a question that I ask service business owners when I start working with them. I ask it pretty early on, and the answer is almost always the same. I ask the question, when did you last properly take a week off? So not a working holiday where you checked your email twice a day and you called it a break. A real week where your head was completely out of the business. And for most business owners, the answer I get is some version of, I tried it and I came back to a mess, or I just genuinely can't take time off because the moment I step away, even if for a few days, the pipeline goes quiet and deals and conversations start slipping through the cracks. And here's what makes that frustrating. It's not usually a skills problem. Most business owners running businesses that sell services are genuinely good at what they do. They're good at the deliverables. The clients love them. Their reputation is solid as well. But when they try and step away, even if it's just briefly, the business stalls because they are the ones who are manually keeping all of these tasks that keep the revenue coming in alive. Now, the advice that you're going to usually hear to fix this is to document everything, create SOPs for every process, systematize and then delegate. And that's not the wrong principle. The issue is that doing this on your own is probably a year-long project dressed up as a solution. And most business owners, well, they need to take a week off sooner than that, right? They need a little bit of time to recover, probably right about now. So here's what I've actually seen work with my clients. The business owners who genuinely managed to step away without their pipeline going cold, didn't build 20, 30, 100 different systems. Instead, they focused their energy and they built just three specific systems that cover the three areas where a service business breaks down the moment that the owner isn't in the building. Now, my name is Will and I help the owners of businesses that deliver a B2B service implement sales systems. These sales systems have delivered over 1.4 billion in net new revenue for my clients over the past 12 years or so. And most of my clients continue to drive revenue without even having to be involved in the sales process at all once they get all this implemented. And today I'm going to walk you through these three systems, what they are, how they work, and what gets in the way when the business owner tries to put them in place the first time around. But before I do any of that though, I want to show you why the most common approach to systematizing a business often leaves business owners in a worse position than when they first started. So if you go down the route of hiring a typical RevOps or Rev infrastructure or managing consultancy to help with all of this, then the advice, well, it goes like this, right? Sit down on a Saturday morning with a coffee and then map out every process in your business, every client interaction, every sales step, every delivery task, the processes for your deliverables to the client. It goes on basically forever. And then you've got to write down instructions for every single one. Then you've got to train someone to follow those instructions. And if you don't deliver instructions that are quite clear enough in the first place, you've got to rewrite them. Then you inevitably realize that you've forgotten 6, 10, thousands of things, you add those in, and then you spend 3 months on this project whilst revenue completely dries up because you've not had the time to do the sales activities that keep the business alive. And all this happens whilst you hand over $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 just for the privilege. Now, I'm not saying that this approach is entirely wrong. It's not completely wrong. But what I am saying is that it's a completely backwards approach for a service business that's trying to create a bit of breathing room for the owner, for the founder. Because you can't stop and systematize everything before you're allowed to take a day off. Because your market, your competitors and your customers, they don't pause whilst you're doing this planning. And there's a second hidden trap below all of this as well that people don't consider. The business owner decides they're going to fix this properly. They make that commitment. Then they bring someone in to help with the sales side of things. A junior salesperson, a VA, someone part-time, and they hand that person a task list that they've just spent 3 to 12 months building and managing and creating. Follow up with these folks on a Monday, add 10 new prospects to your CRM this week, send the proposal reminder on Thursdays, and then this individual, this new hire, does the tasks, which is great until something unexpected happens. A prospect asks a question that isn't in the documentation. A deal goes quiet for reasons that nobody anticipated, but maybe you understand as the business owner. And then inevitably this new hire, well, they stop and wait. They ask the business owner, hey, what do I do next? And then, of course, the business owner now is back in the room, and the help that they hired becomes another thing, another system, another process to manage. And this is what I call the task trap. And it's where most attempts to systematize the revenue side of a business quietly fall apart. And here's what's happening in both of these situations. The business owner is trying to delegate activities when what they actually need to do is build a system and delegate outcomes instead, which we're going to come on to in a second. And it's important to note here that activities, systems, and outcomes are not the same thing. A task is something that you do, whereas a system is something that produces a predictable outcome, which is what we're after, right? We don't care about tasks, we care about generating revenue, which is the outcome. So a system produces a predictable outcome, whether you're the one doing the tasks within the system or not. Now, to be clear, the title of this video says run without you. And so I want to be upfront about something before we get into these three systems, because that phrase carries an assumption that a lot of business owners have, which is just worth challenging for a second. And that assumption is that the reason the business can't run without you is that you are this incredible individual that is completely indispensable, that you're the most important thing within that business. And so the solution must involve replacing yourself or becoming replaceable or building something that doesn't need you at all in the first place. And that's not really what we're aiming for here. The reason that most service business owners can't step away from the business isn't that you, or me, in fact, either, it is just too important. The reality is that the critical business activities that generate revenue within your business, they exist inside your head. So the prospecting, the business owner knows who to target, what message is most likely to land, what angles have been working recently, but none of that is written down anywhere where someone else can follow along. The pipeline. The business owner knows where every deal stands because they were involved in every or most conversations, and the moment they step away, no one else has either that visibility or that intrinsic knowledge of the deal. Then there's the follow-up. So the business owner perhaps has a feel for when to push and when to give a prospect space. And again, that lives in their gut. It's not a documented system or process other people can follow. So the business owner, you are typically the system. And as long as the business owner, you, is the system, you can of course never step away without your revenue diving straight off a cliff. That's the actual problem here. And when you see this clearly, the fix becomes obvious, right? We need to extract what's in your head and either give it to a person or an automated system that carries out these important sales activities when you're not in the room. So the goal here isn't to disappear from the business altogether. The goal is to stop being the single point of failure for the three activities that we're going to cover right now that actually drive your revenue. So with that clarified, let's take a look at the three systems that we need to build here. And fair warning on system number one, this is the system that business owners almost always underestimate the value of. And then when they implement it, they realize that they can solve a whole host of revenue inconsistency and forecasting problems that maybe have driven them mad for years, if not decades. Okay, so the first thing that breaks down when a business owner steps away from the business is top of funnel lead generation. New conversations, well, they dry up because the only person who knows how to reach out to and the angle to communicate and then the messaging to these individuals and the cold approach is probably you, the business owner, who is, rightly so, trying to take a week off to mentally reset or spend some time with your family. And here is the problem trying to get just someone else in your team to cover for you. The problem is that most service businesses already have lumpy revenue, good months, quieter months with no underlying cause between why things are up and down. I call this the roller coaster of sales. Now, when you dig into why this is the case, it almost always comes back to the same thing. Prospecting for a new client only happens when the business owner has time for it, or when you remember to do it, or when you're not so deep into delivery of your service that you have a little bit of time and energy to get stuck into it, which means that inevitably it's inconsistent, which means that then pipeline is inconsistent, which means that revenue is inconsistent, which means that your stress levels are not inconsistently good. So ups and downs and happy and sads across the months and years of running your business. Now, the goal of creating a prospecting cadence is to systemize this process so it happens way more seamlessly. Which then leads to the question of what the heck is a prospecting cadence, right? Well, a prospecting cadence is just a structured, documented, repeatable process to do your cold outreach or warm outreach or whatever you want to do with your prospecting. It's whatever process needs to happen for leads to come into your sales machine. So it defines who to target, how many new contacts need to be added each week. It sets out the sequence of touches across whatever channels best suit your market and your customers, whether that's calls, emails, LinkedIn, a combination of all of these, in-person events, doesn't really matter what it is. And it also has to document the messages, the angles, and what you're trying to achieve as you move the buyer from, again, cold or warmish outbound, inbound prospect to someone who wants to engage with you throughout the rest of the process. It's documented, it's defined, it's systematized, so you don't have to reinvent your approach every Monday morning when you see a new random influencer on LinkedIn sharing some bullshit technique that they've apparently just magically discovered. You don't get suckered into that trap. You know what works, you do it consistently, you make a bunch of money, you're happy, your team's happy, your customers are happy. Now, I've gone deep into the mechanics of building an effective sales cadence in other videos on the channel, so I'm not going to cover the specific tactics here. But what matters for this conversation is that a documented, systematized cadence that you know works because you've measured the results, well, it gives you a couple of things, right? First off, it takes this figuring out who to speak to and what to say completely off the table as a daily decision. That alone makes prospecting significantly faster and more consistent, whether you're running it yourself or you've handed it off onto someone on your team. Secondly, and this is a key point for anyone wanting to step away and have the business run themselves for a little bit, when the cadence is documented, someone else can actually then run it. They don't know everything that you know about your market and your customers and your service. And it doesn't really matter because the cadence itself is built in such a way that the structure of it does all that knowing for them. All they've got to do is follow along with the cadence, get new conversations started, deals are going to progress. And for a business owner who does have a team member or is hiring a team member to take this on, you don't need 3 to 6 months of faffing around of ramp time with your new hire. The handover, the ramp period is just implementing the cadence. Then a little bit of accountability for the outcome. We're going to come on to outcomes later on in this video as well. And for business owners who are running the sales process, the sales function themselves, this cadence still matters because it means you're no longer making judgment calls with every prospect, which takes a lot of brain energy, a lot of mental kind of fatigue can set in when you're reinventing the wheel throughout the day, trying to ad hoc deal with all these different parts of the sales process. Instead, you're now following a structure. Again, it's faster, more consistent, and of course it does make it far easier to hand over when the time comes to make that first sales hire. And I went through this exact process with Jessie, who runs an accountancy firm that specializes in doing the accounts of companies doing complex imports of goods into the US. They're the only clients that she deals with. And Jessie was doing decent with her email outreach and booking a couple of meetings a week. This got her to around $600,000 a year in revenue for her business. And then she joined the salesman.com mentorship. I gave Jessie our SOPs, our standard operating procedures, to create a cadence and then the steps within the cadence itself. And after a few back and forths on group coaching calls, she got her entire process documented out. And the interesting thing was that now that she had her cadence documented, she could clearly see the places where revenue was just absolutely pouring out of her revenue system. She had a bunch of leaks. Now, the main leak that Jessie wanted to deal with in the first instance was that, well, she wasn't following up proactively as what she should have been with the prospects that had completed a discovery call. They said that they were a good fit, but perhaps they needed to think about working with her, or there were some logistical questions that they needed to answer internally. And as Jessie felt like she didn't have the time in a day to complete this task, instead what we did was we helped her hire a virtual assistant that just did this follow-up. Part-time in a business, a couple of hours a day, just did this follow-up activity on her behalf. And it was all pretty simple, right? It's pretty straightforward, but this additional follow-up alone added another $200,000 to her business a year, whilst saving her time, while simplifying her processes day to day and making her life a little bit easier, which is pretty cool, right? So that's the first system to build, a step-by-step cadence that when you're not around, someone else can get stuck in and they can follow, and they're going to get, even if you're converting 80%, if they convert at 70%, they're going to get similar enough results to you that it makes sense for you to take a bit of time away from the business and recharge, spend time with your family or go on some adventures. Now, a quick one before we get into system 2. If you run a service business and your revenue is great 1 month and then it's crap the next and you have this back and forth, well, the problem probably isn't your sales skills. The problem is that you don't have any sales systems running. Well, I might be able to help. At salesman.com, we help you build clear, repeatable sales processes, and we support you with unlimited mentoring in our daily group coaching calls. So if you want to stop being the bottleneck in your revenue goals, then click the link in the description and book a call in with either me or the team. Okay, so back to the 3 systems that you need so that your business can run without you. And a sales cadence to predictably drive new conversations and book meetings in your diary is great, but you can still be stressed completely out of your mind when your calendar is full, but you don't know what your revenue looks like over the next 30, 60, 90 days if you can't forecast it forward. And that's where the second system comes in, and it reveals something you probably never had access to in the past. Okay, so the second thing that breaks when a service business owner steps away from their business, even for a few days, is visibility. And it's not necessarily the deals themselves, but it's visibility over what's happening with them. Now, most business owners know exactly where every activity and every opportunity stands. They were probably in the last meeting that the business had with the prospect, or they're at least aware of what happened in that meeting. They remember, if they were in the meeting, what the prospect said. They know what the next agreed step was. The issue is that this knowledge mostly exists in their head. And the moment they step away to go on a well-deserved break, well, all that knowledge is lost and everything grinds to a halt. And so creating a pipeline overview dashboard is the system that instantly changes this, and I've seen this across hundreds and hundreds of business owners at this point. A pipeline overview dashboard is a live view of every active deal within the business right now, organized by where each prospect sits within the buyer's journey. So it's not a spreadsheet that sometimes maybe gets updated at the end of the week or the beginning of the following week. It is a view within your CRM that shows at any given moment where every single opportunity lands and what that next documented next action is. And the next action here is absolutely key to all of this. If the other people in your business know what that next step is, well, they can probably complete it for you. Alternatively, if you have the same next action steps over and over and over through your customers' buyers' journeys, then you can implement sales systems to automate it and remove it from your to-do list altogether. Now, the stages I use when I'm setting this up for my clients are prospect identified, meeting booked, discovery call complete, proposal sent, agreed in principle, won, and then closed, lost. And every deal has to live in exactly one of those stages at any given time. Every deal has a specific next action documented next to it with a date on it, and then a name of the person who's going to, if someone's helping you out with this, the name of the person on the team who's responsible for progressing it. And this dashboard allows you to see the state of play for your entire sales function at a quick glance. Is anything stalled? Is there a deal that genuinely needs a bit of a nudge today? Has something slipped through the cracks? One look at this dashboard gives you answers to all of these questions and much more information too that I won't kind of dive into in this video. And this visibility is what makes stepping away from the business for a small period of time, a week, a couple of weeks, actually feel safe to you. It's not that everything has to run perfectly without you, but you can see what's happening and you can step in if something genuinely needs your attention without being present for every conversation, without a laborious back and forth with your team or a salesperson when something does get stalled. Now over at salesman.com, we've got a sales system specialist on the mentorship team, and he helped Josh set up a one-page dashboard in HubSpot just last week. We do this all the time, right? So it's pretty consistently that we're putting these together. And Josh sells consulting services to engineering firms, and his deal cycle length's quite long because, well, they depend on there being a project in his customer's business for him to then get the business kind of pushed his direction. And the disconnect from initial conversation to the trigger event of a project starting to a deal being closed was a big source of stress for Josh in his business. And because of the stress, he really took any time off work because he was nervous that he was going to miss out on that big next opportunity if he was away from the phone, the computer, his emails for even just a long weekend. Now, as soon as we got this dashboard set up, it was obvious that through a little bit of lack of discipline and also a lack of visibility of his sales pipeline, he was just missing tons of opportunities that were literally sat in front of him ready to be scooped up. And after implementing a simple dashboard in HubSpot, he realized that, well, it actually takes way less time to manage his pipeline and progress deals than he actually thought. So now he's closing more deals than ever before, and he started living the dream, right? Doing either a 3 or 4 day week rather than 5 or 6 days that he was working previously. And that's pretty cool, right? And this all came from a bit of work, obviously, but mostly came from a very simple dashboard that finally gave him the visibility that he never had before. And so if you don't have a dashboard like this, you need to get one implemented. And before we move on to the third system that is required, if you want your business to run without you, there is one mistake that business owners make with the pipeline overview, and it's worth pointing out very quickly here. They treat the pipeline overview as a reporting tool, something that they look at on a Friday afternoon to see how that previous week went. And that's not what this is. The pipeline overview is a living document. It gets updated after every meaningful interaction. So every call, every meeting, every email that moves the deal forward, these have to result in an update in the dashboard. And that discipline, whether it's you, the business owner, or whoever manages the pipeline, that is part of this system. And this is important because the dashboard is only as reliable as it is current and up to date. So even with those two systems in place, there is still one thing that quietly takes down more deals than anything else when a business owner steps away, and it's actually really easy to fix and resolve it. So the third thing that breaks when a service business owner steps away is momentum across the deals themselves. So active deals start to stall. Prospects who are genuinely interested start to go a bit quiet. And it's not because anything went wrong in a conversation, it's because nobody followed up. And nobody followed up because, well, there was no documented structure for what happens after a meeting, after a proposal goes out, after maybe a prospect goes quiet for a few days after that proposal has been delivered. And you, the business owner, you know when to chase, when to give someone space, when to push forward when it's in the best interest of the client. But that knowledge in your head, that's been built up from years of conversations and trial and error and your gut experience on things. And inevitably, it never gets written down. So when you step away for a week to spend some time with your family or you go on an adventure, everything grinds to a halt because everyone's second guessing, is the boss going to appreciate this follow-up? Should I just leave it for a few days or a week or a couple of weeks? Is it better to just not kind of rock the apple cart versus trying to get stuck in with things? So what we need is the follow-up protocol. And this is the system that makes sure deals keep moving forward, even when you're personally not watching them like a hawk. And here's how it works in practice. After every meaningful conversation with a prospect, whether that's a discovery call, a proposal meeting, a check-in conversation, there is one non-negotiable that must happen before that conversation ends. Absolutely non-negotiable. And that is a specific next step agreed between you and the buyer and that it's documented down. Not, I'll be in touch or let me know if you've got questions, if you just want to think about it. There's got to be something concrete. It's got to be something like, I'll have the proposal to you by Wednesday. Would it make sense to walk through it together? And we can perhaps do this on Thursday afternoon. Does that work at your end? So the next step has to be specific. There has to be a date, and it's got to be in both parties' diaries before you hang up the phone or jump off the Zoom meeting. And I know that sounds pretty basic. It's because it is basic, but almost no service business owners that I've spoken to over the past 12 years do this one step, this one system consistently. And this is often because when the business owner is present, they rely on their own initiative and their memory to keep these conversations going. But the moment, again, that they step away, that initiative doesn't transfer to anyone else. There's very likely anyone else in your business who has the business acumen that you have. Otherwise, they'd be running their own business. Why would they be hired an employee in yours? So our follow-up protocol needs to answer the following questions. What happens when the next step doesn't happen? And then what happens when a prospect misses a call, they don't respond to a proposal, or perhaps it goes quiet for a week? And we need to document those next steps, whether someone is going to complete them on our behalf if we're not in the office, or whether we're going to automate them. And for follow-up, automation is almost always the best move. Well, we might want to wait 2 days, send one short line email. Then we wait another 3 days, and then we perhaps pick up the phone, give them a call. And if there's no response after another couple of days, we send them a breakup email and we move the deal to, in the CRM, in our pipeline, to either a nurture list or closed as lost. And that is it. You will close tons, whether you're in the office or not, you will close a ton more business by just systematizing your follow-up in a simple step-by-step process like that. Whatever the sequence is, it just needs to be written down, documented, and then we need to follow it the same way every single time. We don't want to reinvent this process depending on whether you're in or out of the office, whether you're feeling good or bad, whether your revenue is up or down. We want this protocol, this system to be set in stone. And obviously we test it. If it doesn't work, if it's terrible, if it fails, if it pisses people off, we look at the data, the results, and we adjust. We use the scientific method. But We want it to be, once we've got it locked in, just continuously going out for years, if not decades to come. And when this protocol is in place, once the system is in place, two things that were happening before stop happening. Deals stop dying in the gaps because there are now no gaps. Every deal has that documented next step, and there's a clear structure for what to do if, for whatever reason, that next step doesn't go quite to plan. And you can always then step away from the business for a little bit, knowing that follow-up is running seamlessly in the background. And that is the three systems that you need if you want to be able to take time away from your business and still have revenue coming in, if not revenue increasing over that time. But if I stopped right there, I'd be leaving out a piece of advice that typically decides whether any of this actually works or not. Because there's one step that most people skip, and without it, well, most business owners end up running these three systems themselves, which means that, well, you're probably going to make a bunch more money because everything's going to flow seamlessly through your sales pipeline, but you haven't then really created a system that allows you to escape. Okay, so let's say the three systems are in place. The prospecting cadence is documented, it's systematized, the pipeline dashboard is now live, you can see it at a sneak peek on a Monday morning and check everything is moving forward. And the follow-up protocol is written down, it's been automated, it's in practice. And well, let's say that you're still running all of these systems because either there's no one else to hand it over to yet, or the people on your team, well, they're waiting to be told what next to do rather than using their brains and getting stuck into things themselves. This is the task trap that we covered earlier on, appearing in a new, kind of even more gross and evil form. And the solution is to delegate outcomes rather than tasks. Because if you give someone a task, they do the task. Add 10 people from this list to the prospecting cadence and work them through it over the next week. So they add them, they cross the people off the list, but when something crops up that wasn't quite to plan, when a prospect responds in an unexpected way or the cadence needs adjusting because maybe something isn't quite working, well, they stop. They wait. And they ask you what to do. So you're now immediately dragged back into the busy work that you're trying to engineer yourself out of. However, if you give someone an outcome to own, the conversation is absolutely, utterly, completely different. It might sound something like this. You might tell someone that you now own the cadence. Your job is to make sure that we're adding to the right prospect at the right place at the right time each week, and that the process works. And when the process breaks, which inevitably is going to happen at some point, even in the best processes on the planet, even the processes that we implement, there's always going to be kind of edge cases on some of this. Instead of stopping and asking me how to fix it, I want you to bring me a potential solution, and I'm going to either approve it, carry on, or we can sit down and we can find an alternative way of solving the problem together. And this is a completely different type of instruction to give your team. And it produces a completely different kind of result as well. Because handing someone a task list is like hiring someone a babysitter. The babysitter keeps things ticking over while you're out. Nothing gets worse, nothing gets better. If there's an emergency, they call you and you come home from your meal and deal with the kid and solve the problems. And when you come back, everything is going to be roughly where you left it if everything went to plan. And then you hand it over again and again and again. You do this in this continuous cycle. Or the alternative pathway that I encourage you to lean into is giving someone ownership of an outcome, because this forces your team to ask, well, how do I fix it? Rather than, should I call the boss because reality didn't match the documentation? It also allows them to grow, to improve the process, to perhaps add to the process where your mental gaps, where your skill gaps have led the process to not run as efficiently as what it might run, with a little bit of new blood adding some ideas to things as well. Now, I appreciate that you might be mostly running the sales function of your business right now. And so ownership of all these three systems still sits with you. And that's fine, but the principle still applies. And the cool thing is that when you build these systems out with clear outcomes rather than just simple task lists, you've now built something transferable. You've built something that a real person can step into, they can own it, rather than a set of notes that only kind of make sense when your brain is attached to them. And inevitably, when the time comes to hand this over, as you should be doing as a business owner, you should be, as cliche as it is, working on the business rather than in the business on most occasions, right? On most of the kind of siloed elements that make a business run. When it comes time to hand all this over, well, it's now not a 6-month training program to ramp up your new starter. It is just follow these processes, take ownership for the outcome. You come to me with solutions rather than problems, and let's make a bunch of money. Now, if you want help building these systems in your own business, well, I might be able to help. This is for business owners who sell a service, who are doing most of the selling themselves, and perhaps they've hit a ceiling in revenue. Perhaps your revenue is inconsistent. You're on this roller coaster of sales. Perhaps deals are slipping even though you feel like you've had a solid call with your prospects. Or maybe you feel like there's just no time to run the sales process because the delivery of your service keeps taking over and just clogging up your diary. Well, to fix these problems, inevitably you need a system, and that's what we do over at salesman.com. We help you install clear, repeatable sales processes, sales systems that create consistent, qualified opportunities, then convert them into your ideal customers. And I mentor you through all of this. Myself and the salesman.com mentorship team, we mentor you through all of this, and it's all guaranteed. If you do the work and your system isn't producing qualified opportunities and closing you more sales within that first 30 days, you get a full refund, an additional $1,000 on top, and I'll keep working with you for free until it all comes together. So if that sounds interesting, click the link in the video description to learn more. And if you want to know why running your business always seems harder than what probably you feel like it should, or harder than you feel like it needs to be, well, click here to watch this video where I share the 4 tasks that you need to complete to make your service business run profitably without all of the friction that you're facing right now.